My dear beloved children, today I want to tell you about how representatives of different civilizations of your galaxy communicate with each other. The inhabitants of the fifth dimension and above have the ability of telepathic communication, so they talk without words, by reading the information energy packets. But still there is a certain intergalactic language. It remotely resembles the artificially created on Earth language Esperanto, which is based on words borrowed from different language groups. But unlike the terrestrial language, the intergalactic language mainly includes not words, but concepts. It is based on the same energy informational packages, but dressed in certain sounds, which is a material manifestation of telepathic communication. On Earth, too, there is something similar, but rather, these are not words, but exclamations that are understandable to any person. They can carry surprise, delight, fear, approval, condemnation, threat. The same applies to gestures, talking with your hands. It is to this method of communication, as a rule, that people who speak different languages resort in order to at least minimally explain themselves to each other. To understand the principle of intergalactic Esperanto, imagine that their exclamations carry not only an emotional, but also a semantic load, the same energy information package that was mentioned above. Nobody made this language. It arose naturally as a result of telepathic communication of representatives of highly developed civilizations. There was not even a special need for direct contacts between the inhabitants of higher dimensions, and it is used mainly when it is necessary to fix on paper some important, jointly developed decision. To some extent, it can be called the clerical language, which is used in joint meetings of the galactic councils and federations. It is very rare to hear this language as a spoken language, except for negotiations during joint military operations or for clear orders given to groups consisting of representatives of various civilizations in order to avoid misunderstandings. What some channelers pass off as the language of aliens is nothing more than the tricks of the entities of the lower astral, and you can easily read this from their very low vibrational energies. Galactic Esperanto is not taught in schools. It is understandable to every inhabitant of the worlds of higher dimensions, since it is based on a vibrational semantic component, the same as that on the basis of telepathic communication. This language will also become clear to you, my dear ones, as soon as you get comfortable in the world of the fifth dimension and enter the wide expanses of communication with your galactic brothers and sisters. And now I want to tell you how the interaction between the various civilizations of your galaxy takes place at the so-called everyday level. If you draw a parallel with earthly realities, then this can be compared with your visit to various countries, sometimes quite exotic for you. So, for example, to a European who finds himself in Arab, Asian, African countries, many things will seem unusual and strange. But, on the other hand, such a journey will be all the more interesting for him, since it will open up new horizons for understanding the world. At the same time, it is very important to know the habits and customs of these countries so as not to offend the local residents or get into an awkward position with your behavior. Therefore, experienced travelers before each trip to a new country carefully study the peculiarities inherent in it and its inhabitants. Something similar happens in your galaxy when the inhabitants of a planet are going to visit another planet. What goals do they pursue? The same as you: curiosity and the desire to experience something new for them, to learn from experience and knowledge in any area of their lives. But it also happens that someone has a desire to learn a new profession or what he needs to improve his work. This can be about anything: new technologies, agriculture, architecture, and even music. Since all the inhabitants of the worlds of higher dimensions have access to the universal data bank, they can easily determine exactly where, on which planet or in which civilization, they can find what they need. They can even find out the names of those who are most successful in their field of interest. And then it's all a matter of technology. Since all the inhabitants of the higher worlds are able to communicate with each other telepathically, They contact those who interest them in order to obtain agreement to a meeting, and only after observing the rules of decency they go on a visit to another planet. This is about business relationships, but there are also tourist trips of a general familiarization nature. In this case, a certain etiquette is also observed. As a rule, for permission to visit a particular planet, they turn to the Council of Elders, which is a kind of analog of the government on Earth. In this case, guests are met by representatives of this planet allocated for these purposes, who conduct a tour of it and answer questions from visitors. Sometimes intergalactic language is even used so that everyone present understands what is at stake, since telepathic communication is used mainly with direct contact between two inhabitants of the higher worlds. As you can see, my family, you have much in common with your galactic brothers and sisters, with the only difference being that you visit different countries of your planet, while they travel throughout the galaxy. We continue. I want to open to you another facet of the relationship of a person with his galactic family, and it's about your star families. I'll make a reservation right away that not every person who incarnated on Earth has such a family, since many young souls came from civilizations that exist in the parallel worlds of your planet. And the expression star families refers to the civilizations of the higher dimensions of your galaxy. As I have said more than once, now a huge number of ancient souls have embodied on Earth, who have come here with a specific goal, to make the transition to the fifth dimension in their physical body themselves and to help others in this. And such a business trip to the three-dimensional world for these souls is akin to diving to the bottom of the ocean, the thickness of the waters of which hides from them the light in which these ancient souls used to live. It is especially difficult for those of them who find themselves in unfavorable conditions of life and in whose environment there are no spiritual people with a high level of vibrations. Even if the memory of their extraterrestrial origin is not completely blocked, but left in the form of deep memories, it can be difficult for them to enter the service, and sometimes dangerous, since any deviation in thinking from the standards of the three-dimensional world is perceived in modern society as a mental disorder. Therefore, their star family tries to patronize such people especially diligently, using all the methods available to it for this. So, she is in constant contact with the guardian angels of this person, with his heavenly patrons, who lead through the life of everyone who has incarnated on Earth with the mission of service to humanity. Much has already been said about the methods and techniques of the forces of light in helping people in my messages, so I will not repeat myself. Today I want to dwell on the specifics of the interaction of such people with the star families. Since the difference in vibrations between them is huge, their star parents can communicate with their children only on a subtle plane, and most often this happens during sleep, when the soul is at least for a short time able to leave the physical body and move to the worlds of higher dimensions. Such communication can be called unconscious, since it occurs at the level of the soul, which, after communicating with its star family, corrects the thoughts and actions of a person with the assistance of his guardian angels and spiritual guides. Sometimes a person himself does not understand why suddenly, for no particular reason, the vector of his thinking and worldview changes. Some call it insight or insight, but in fact, this is how the interaction of the soul of this person with his star family manifests itself on the physical plane. On the subtle plane, his invisible assistants weave the lace of his fate, sending him the right people, the necessary information and those life circumstances that are most favorable for the fulfillment of the mission with which he came to Earth. Believe me, my relatives, not a single pure and ancient soul, finding itself in the conditions of a three-dimensional world, could itself without support from above reach a spiritual level that would allow it to make the transition into the fifth dimension. Therefore, do not forget to thank your heavenly helpers and your star families for leading you through life, protecting you and guiding you to the light so that you do not get lost in the darkness of the third dimension, thereby depriving your soul of the unique experience that it intended to go through. Today I want to tell you in more detail about how your galactic brothers and sisters, now embodied on Earth in physical bodies, interact with people. And it's about those of them who came down here with unlocked memory. There are two groups of such beings. The first are those who are born in the usual way from earthly parents, who are selected for them very carefully in order to maintain their high vibrations from birth. They need an appropriate habitat. Therefore, as a rule, highly spiritual parents are chosen for them, who could understand an unusual baby and develop his natural abilities. And yet, even in ideal conditions by the standards of the three-dimensional world, they were not always able to fulfill the mission with which they came to Earth. If there was a failure in the program planned for them, they were often taken out of incarnation at an early age, so that the child, becoming an adult, would not fall into too low vibrations, from which he could no longer return to his star family. This explains the early death of some unusual kids with a pure vulnerable soul, for whom the low vibration three-dimensional world turned out to be too tough. The second group consists of those representatives of highly developed civilizations who are introduced into the society of Earthlings as adults. And since they appear out of nowhere, they, like illegal intelligence officers, come up with a biography corresponding to the tasks for which they descended to Earth. In order to maintain their level of vibrations, they are constantly in touch with their star families. To do this, an energy channel is created between them, which is something like a charger and at the same time an adapter between different dimensions. This group, like the first one, can be called the risk group, since the three-dimensional world poses a considerable danger to beings who have come from higher dimensions. But for the good of humanity, your galactic family takes a similar risk, unfortunately not always justified. As you know, new and unusual knowledge that runs counter to official science is ridiculed and hushed up by those who are at the helm of your planet. And new technologies designed to improve the lives of Earthlings are hidden from them and used for military purposes or in the interests of representatives of the deep state. But soon everything will change. As soon as the criminals who have seized power on your planet are eliminated and all their deeds are revealed, your galactic brothers and sisters will be able to openly cooperate with Earthlings, sharing their experience and advanced technologies with them, thereby helping to accelerate the transition into the fifth dimension of those who is ready for it. Next, I want to continue talking about your stellar brothers and sisters from higher dimensions, incarnated on Earth now. What are their distinctive features? First, unusual appearance. Most often they are tall, above average, proportional physique, with beautiful hair and rather large and regular features. You can even say that they are all a little above the usual. And this is explained by the fact that in the worlds of high dimensions there are no ugly creatures that are sometimes found on Earth. There it isn't possible to see fat, bow-legged, bald, in a word, ugly men or women. In worlds where harmony reigns, it is reflected in everything, and first of all in their inhabitants. Therefore, even once on Earth, representatives of highly developed civilizations retain their familiar appearance. Second, sight. As a rule, he is very calm and friendly. It does not reflect the emotions inherent in a person of the three-dimensional world, often obsessed with passions and internal torments. These beings have already reached the state of an outside observer, not making their own judgments about other people. Even being in the three-dimensional world, they continue to live according to the laws of the universe, and their gaze fully reflects this. Third, conduct. They are full of nobility in their every word, gesture and deed. This can be called natural aristocracy, without indulgence and alienation from other people. They feel equally free everywhere, in high circles and among ordinary people, since the person himself is valuable to them, and not the position that he occupies in society. At the same time, They do not try to adapt to someone in order to please or inspire confidence. Their very presence sets the interlocutor on a certain wave of trusting and respectful communication. People intuitively read the high energies of such a person and try to tune into their frequency. Fourth, reliability. From these people literally breathes decency and reliability. This is read in all their appearance, and, as a rule, they are believed unconditionally. People, reading it on a subconscious level, are always drawn to them. And fifth, the ability to clearly express one's thoughts. These people are laconic, because they are not characterized by inner fuss and self-doubt. Their language is laconic, but not colorless, although they rarely have a sense of humor. And this is explained by the fact that the world of the third dimension is still alien to them, and they are not familiar enough with its realities. But their every word is weighty, and every promise is always feasible. There is never any ambiguity or innuendo in their words. This is what instills confidence in people and makes them want to cooperate with them. All of the above features apply to both groups of representatives of highly developed civilizations incarnated on Earth. This is where we will stop today. The Father Absolute, who loves you immeasurably, has spoken to you.